Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our ERC Cares Zoom today. This is a Zoom on A Home That Cares with our speaker Bonnie Davis, who is the owner of A Home That Cares. My name is Lam. I am the Retiree Resource Specialist at the Emeriti Retirees Relations Center. Unfortunately, Aisha couldn't be here today, but she misses us. She wishes she could be here. We do have some upcoming programs next week. We have two Zooms with the healthcare facilitators regarding open enrollment. So if you have not registered for those and you still have some questions about open enrollment, please feel free to do so. I'll link the links in the chat. And we also have a Medicare 101 happening on Wednesday next week, the 20th. So I'll also link that in the chat as well. And now I would like to hand this over to our speaker, Bonnie Davis. Bonnie, thank you for attending.
Thank you for having me. I do work that a lot of people don't know exists. I am for 18 years, it'll be 18 years in January. I have been helping families figure out appropriate care settings when people can no longer live at home. I'm usually either contacted by children or seniors directly when they're referred to me by doctors, discharge planners from hospitals, social workers, case managers, care managers, or just friends. And it's a passion project for me, frankly, because the devil's in the details. But my philosophy is teaming with the family so that what they know about their loved ones, and I know about the industry, the knowledge of both come together and make sense to everybody that we are doing the best possible choice for the person that can no longer be at home. And I will say from the beginning that I don't charge because the structure of my industry is that I am paid by whatever property the person goes to. I work with large assisted livings and tiny board and cares. I work in the LA area. I am certified and I know all the rules and regulations, and my job is to bring the consumer up because you are in a position of selecting from businesses, and I want to make my clients wise, know what licensing requires, know what their choices are that will meet their needs. So that is how the industry is structured. I have a lot of titles. I'm called a placement agent. I'm, a senior living advisor. I'm a strategic planner. That's what I perceive myself as, and I have a social work background. So, with that, I'm going to attempt to answer the questions that are usually thrown out to me. And then at the end, leave enough time so that anybody can fire away a question. And I will attempt to be as specific as possible, knowing there's a large group here. So, the beginning of my process is talking to the family about the person who does not want to be or cannot be home alone. There are many reasons for this. Social isolation is one. A progressive disease or just aging is another, needing the assurance that someone is there 24/7. And it may be that they want to stay at home, but it's unaffordable because since about 2016, the labor law rules have changed and home care has become pretty darn prohibitive for most people. So the first thing I do is an assessment of who they are, what their goals are. I try to get the family involved because I want the family to come together about this. Parents can be or seniors can be fiercely independent, and uh, that's great. But I want it to make sense to everybody if possible. Um, and oftentimes it's children that take the lead on this rather than the seniors themselves. They're seeing the senior being more isolated at home due to not being able to drive, or they're dealing with a medical diagnosis that they know is progressive and they're trying to get in front of it. And I will say that a large portion of the work I do is from the medical community because there's some cognitive impairment going on because a person cannot drive, or dementia, or Parkinson's, or a million other things that are affecting the ambulation and ability of the person to live successfully on their own. So many people don't know that there is a variety of care settings based on the needs of the person. Large assisted livings are the places most people think of when they think of moving from their home and having some oversight. There are, yes, I have done a deep dive because I've been doing this 18 years. I know the history of each property. A property, even though it will be branded, it may be part of a chain. The devil's in the details. You want to be able to work with the management at that site. And like everything else, it's about who's there and how likely they are to stay there. So I will try to bring the person I'm working with up to speed. I will tour with them if they want me to. If they don't want me to, I don't have to. I really try to do the degree of intervention that the family wants, but I am a resource both in having them transition to a property and after that, because there's a lot involved. Um, so care settings. So you have big assisted livings and you also have small homes. When a person needs a lot of hands-on care, let's say they do have dementia or have extreme difficulty navigating through a space, people move to smaller settings so that they can have a higher caregiver ratio. So again, I'm speaking broadly here, but I want you to know that what I know about are large settings and very small settings. And it may be based on the diagnosis or the needs that a person starts out in a large setting and moves to a smaller setting when they are not wanting the activities and social life, but want the intense care. A lot of people ask me, I help families figure out budget because that is significant. And Los Angeles is a big place with a lot of, I work from indigent people to celebrities, literally. So budgets can be very broad in this town. People ask me what benefits they can get and who pays for what. So what I will do is briefly go over what pays for assisted living. So the answer to that is if you bought long-term care a while ago, then I would review the policy. We'd come up with what it would pay for in assisted living and when it kicks in, because long-term care policies have certain requirements of needing care to utilize them. And oftentimes they have a waiting period of 60 to 90 days. So you would know if you're paying into a long-term care policy for this person. Additionally, if you're a veteran, based on certain economics and care needs, veterans have some benefits that they can apply for. Takes a while to get them oftentimes, but they're retroactive to the date of the application. And if I'm dealing with a veteran, I will bring all that to bear. Most of these places are private pay for the most part. if you are looking at the welfare system, our Medi-Cal system, there is something I've put together to help people navigate that. It's pretty tricky. No, most assisted livings do not roll to Medi-Cal if you run out of money. So I'm trying to figure out a budget that makes sense. Hopefully people never have to roll to Medi-Cal because the choices are different. I will, let's see, other sources of funding. That's pretty much the main sources right there. No, health insurance does not cover anything except if the doctor writes a prescription for home health, which is usually physical therapy, occupational therapy, or assistance while the person is rehabilitating wherever they are. It can be in a home, it can be in a assisted living setting, it can be in a board and care. It is paid for by Medicare. I know I'm going through a ton of stuff in hopes that you will ask me any specifics that you want because there is a lot to this. The other thing that is covered by our Medicare system is hospice care. Hospice care is an interesting thing because people think all kinds of things about it, but again, it can be done in any setting, home, assisted living, board and care. It is technically end-of-life care. It is giving pain medication appropriately when things could be rough. It is having a nice, as smooth as possible transition to death. And it is covered by Medicare when the doctor feels it's appropriate and it is prescribed. So I want to make clear that your health insurance doesn't cover anything in assisted living but home health and hospice care. And of course, if you're on a supplemental plan, anything you've got going in your life with Medicare now will be as well happening in terms of your medication program and your doctor's visits. All that remains the same wherever you go. I want to bring up independent living because I get asked a lot about that. I do work with places that are considered independent living, but I want to make a big distinction here. I'm going to focus on Los Angeles County, assuming that's the geographic area you're interested in. There are very few places that are purely independent living, which only means that they are not licensed to and they're not licensed as an assisted living, and they do not employ caregivers. That is the difference. An apartment, a senior apartment is an apartment. It is not a licensed entity. It is truly independent living, but the independent communities that are out there that are senior communities that are independent really means they're not licensed with employees to provide care. That's the distinction. Most places in assisted living provide a 3-meal plan or a 2-meal plan. A lot of people move to a place because they don't want to drive as much. They don't want to do grocery shopping. They want to have meals prepared, and they want to have more choices about what they do. Assisted living places have activities. Your social life oftentimes revolves about in the building or the activities that the property is providing, because as you age, everybody in an assisted living generally is open to new friendships, and it provides easily accessible activities, care, oversight, transportation, usually within a 7 to 10 mile radius is free. Transportation to your doctors in that radius is free. Meals are free, housekeeping is free. And when I say free, it's included in your rent. It's not an additional cost. Um, Everything is free in terms of maintenance of the unit. The thing you're continuing to pay for is your cell phone generally, or your landline that you'll pay for, or any souped up television programming, extra stations, but most places have Wi-Fi and it's also included. That's what's in your rent. The way assisted living works is that I usually send the family a generic medical form that is completed by your doctor and is required by any assisted living. I get that done so I know that my assessment has done the deep dive on what care needs are. And I know what the property is going to see when they ask for your medical report. No surprises. You are paying for the size of your unit and you're paying for specific care. And that is so everybody doesn't, you know, wind up paying the same amount for a lot of care they're not using. Are costs negotiable? You bet they are. And one of the things is my mission, frankly, is to bring you up to speed on getting the best pricing you can in a unit. All of the assisted livings are running for-profit businesses, and I feel like the consumer needs to know how to advocate on their own behalf. Let's see. I feel like I have just thrown out a whole bunch of information. I would love to hear what you're interested in. I will say that different properties have different costs based on location. And, you know, UCLA is on the west side. I deal a lot with moving people to less expensive places as well as the west side. Again, the devil's in the details of how we're going to navigate it, depending upon the retirement assets. So I would love, Lam, to have you open this up for questions, because I've just given you a huge overview of some of the things that I go into a deep dive with if they're relevant to the family I'm working with.
Yeah, so we'll open up to questions now. If anyone's wants to speak, please raise your hand. But we actually do have a question from Susan in the chat. Susan's asking, will you discuss continuing care communities? That is a
I
place where
can.
one can live independently but can move to assisted living and even memory care.
So again, I'm going to show my biases here. Continuing care communities, you generally pay into in the hopes that you'll stay there for life. And boy, this is bringing up a great topic. I'm glad for this question. Especially if you're starting with memory care, it may not make financial sense to go to a continuing care community because you're betting that you know how you're going to age. I know some continuing care communities that their memory care is not great, honestly. They're beautiful. They have grounds. They have wonderful independent living. But the one thing about aging, and I didn't mention this, is you want to be able to pivot depending upon the details of the aging. I do a ton of work in the dementia world, and there's many different types of dementia, and things do not roll out the same for everyone. So I would not actually pick a continuing care community knowing that you're heading in the dementia area unless you've really fully vetted that they are strong in memory care. There are some communities that have a reputation for programming in memory care, The places that I mention are month to month. They're not like continuing care. I do work with continuing care places, but based on the details of the person, continuing care generally is a good investment because it's a financial investment when you're more on the independent side than older and dealing with a medical diagnosis that you know where you're heading. They are structured for the more independent person and then moving into assisted. And then, so continuing care communities have a skilled nursing attached. Um, I could do a whole other talk on skilled nursing. So skilled nursing, and I want to make, before I launch into that, I want to make sure I'm answering your question about continuing care retirement communities. We have a few of them. They are a buy-in situation, which means you're paying an upfront fee. You will get a certain percentage back if you should leave, but you're giving them a bulk of money to work with. And so I would talk to you and your financial advisor whether that makes any sense based on the specifics of the person's needs. Does that answer the question? Can you ask the person whether I've addressed continuing care at retirement communities? It's basically a facility that has independent, assisted, memory care, and skilled nursing. And then I want to do 2 bits on skilled nursing here because people do not understand what that is.
And also in addition, is there a difference between communities that are for profit and not for profit?
Yes and no. Because it depends upon which one you're dealing with. Wow. The devil's in the details on which community, honestly. Um, there are so many of each and they vary so radically. I want to go with which is managed best. If they're a for-profit, I want to go with which has the best management. I deal with for-profits and nonprofits. And I want to say it depends upon which one you're talking about, honestly, and it depends upon the care you're looking for. I am thinking of several nonprofits that are great in certain arenas and not in others. I hate to say it, but I need to know what, if I could get a little information on, were you talking about memory care, what we're talking about? And I don't want to name names, but nonprofits vary wildly, as do for-profits. So it's very hard for me to answer that question generally. I don't find the costs very different if that's the bottom line that they're looking for. I don't, I do want to say one thing about skilled nursing though, because people really misunderstand it. I want to explain when a person goes into skilled nursing. In our universe of medical care, skilled nursing is a setting where most people do not live. There are certain reasons. So skilled nursing is when you need doctors and nurses around 24/7. That is not the normal aging process. And I mean MDs there 24/7 and RNs there 24/7. It is really a rehabilitation setting for most people. They don't live in skilled nursing. There's 2 exceptions. One is with Medi-Cal, which is a whole different conversation. But a normal person who is aging and is not in the welfare system would go have a hospitalization, need rehabilitation, so they would go to a skilled nursing for a period of time. They would hit a baseline Your Medicare covers skilled nursing when you are rehabilitating. Then it stops once you've hit a baseline. And then it's private pay, which is exorbitant. And it's a hospital-like setting if you've been in them. So it's not generally where people want to live. So a lot of people say to me, oh, I want a continuing care community because it has a skilled nursing facility, not understanding the use of a skilled nursing facility. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that big topic.
So we do have another question from Julie. Julie's asking, are you able to help people outside the LA area?
So I teach people how to find somebody like me outside the LA area because my industry has become the Wild West. And I want to say before, it's bringing up a great thing. Thank you for your questions because I'm realizing what I'm not talking about. Usually when something happens and you feel the need to make this transition, you go online. And you go online and you put your information in to one of these big chains that are call centers. They won't be helping you. They are putting your name and information out there in order to get a commission from the properties that they think you want to see to get a list. I started out learning this business in one of these huge companies. I actually became #1 in the country doing everything they didn't want me to do. I met the family, I visited the properties. So Wild West on going online to get a property in another area. I will, if you email me, I'll show you how to find people who are boots on the ground, real people that are interested in figuring out what you want to figure out in order to distill the list and not going to throw out your information unbeknownst to you so they can make a commission. Sadly, a lot of people have gotten into this industry just sending out lists and not helping the family. You need to know how to assess the lists, distill the lists, and have an advocate working on your behalf with the property. So the answer to your question is yes, but I'll tell you specifically what you want to do to find a person who is boots on the ground, not going to be sending you lists and not giving you help. You know. So that answer that. I mean, I will give you some techniques to find someone who has a good reputation in the area that shows up at the places, knows the communities, and work with people. So email me on that. And depending upon the area, I'll either maybe know somebody but more than likely be telling you how to check this out.
Mm-hmm. And we have Cornelia in the chat who says the hospitals also throw lists at you too.
The hospitals also what?
Throw the list at you, I guess, of the
Yes, yes,
okay.
they do. And the hospital people have never been to the places, have no experience with them. I mean, I'm going to bring up the dark side of the industry, not with hospitals so much, but with rehabs, skilled nursings. There are kickbacks going on. It's really, you really have to be buyer beware here and interview. So let's say you were to call me, interview me, like, see how much I'm willing to help you. You want a team player with you doing what you want and not somebody just spitting your information out to everybody. And then everybody's going to be marketing to you. When I am working with somebody, I do not give out their phone number. I, I, I do a complete write-up on the situation so that the property knows that you don't have to do discovery every time you walk into a property. They know what you're going to be, what part of the property interests you, and they should be able to figure out why I'm sending it to them and not somebody else. because I'm trying to vet this. I work with people that want to turn over every rock, and if they do, I'll show them everything that would be licensed for what they want. But most people also want to distill it down to the specifics of their situation. I can do anything the client wants in that regard, but they are going to be a savvy consumer. That's what I really want. Because
Yeah.
our industry needs that, terribly needs that. People are being taken advantage of. I had somebody call me, you know, actually UCLA person, and said, would you talk to this person? They had someone die in a property, removed all their things, and are being charged room and care through the month. Well, that's against licensing. So I was able to pivot that person to file a claim. I said I would help them. I mean, I'm not getting paid for this, and that's fine, because I want this industry to be good. And you can't, so just FYI, if someone dies in a normal community, you can give 30 days notice and leave. That's the norm. If someone passes away in a community and you remove their things from the unit, you should not be charged a dime the next day. That's the law. We have laws that govern this, and Title 22 laws and all that. I need to know them to make my clients savvy. So those are the little weird things you never think you never even think to ask about.
Mhm. And I think I saw a question. I think I saw John Dahl had his hands raised. John, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, you may have already answered it. I was kind of wondering if you have a list of the communities that are around in this area, or are there many or aren't there many in Los Angeles? I don't think there's many, but
Oh my God. So you are the person I want to be talking to, because there are so many, so many communities, but you have to figure out what your goal is in the community. If you're young and you want activities, if you're on a budget, where you are, you know, and then, people are very into lists. I will send a list, but I mean, there are in LA County hundreds of licensed places. So, yeah, yeah.
the other question I had was, are you an hourly fee, a
I
set
don't
fee?
charge. I want to say this. I don't charge. I get paid. So, the industry is kind of like real estate, weirdly. I didn't set it up like this. Um, and I've had people want me to charge them, frankly, and I say, look, if everything is said and done and I don't place you and you want to pay me, we'll figure something out. But I do not charge. I get paid a referral fee should I assist you, and I'm not pressure you. This can take years. I'm saying I've done this 18 years. Sometimes it does take years for someone to actually move. They have to know it's the right time. Um, but I don't charge for my time. So I will spend as much time as you want figuring it out. My reputation is based on it. I love what I do. I don't advertise. I have a wonderful practice. I don't charge for my time. What I get paid for, and paid well for, by the way, is if and when you move or your parents move and you select a property that we've discussed, and I send them a write-up which secures that I will get paid. That's how I get paid. But I want people to pick my brain, because my job is actually to advocate for you. And I've turned this whole thing around so that I have great relationships with people in the industry who respect what I'm doing, because this is not the norm. And I have found over times, I know so many people, And my job is to advocate for you. I want good relationships with the property, but not because you're paying high dollar, because they know that I know what I'm doing. And there is a mutual respect about that, so I don't charge.
May I
Does that
ask
make
another
sense?
question, Lamb?
Yeah, sure.
Um, it, I apologize, I was 5 minutes late. Is this your company? Are you
Yes,
independently, are you the sole
yes,
employee, I guess? Okay, thank
yes.
you.
But there's a million people that do what I do. But I have a little bit different orientation, I think, frankly.
I
And I'm easy to check out, easy to check out. Um, because I work
I
with,
wasn't aware there was other people like you in this
so
industry.
a lot of people aren't, and they're not really exactly like me, frankly. If you go online, I mean, I could talk about how the industry has changed. Um, it's become, let's face it, aging has become, people are out to make money on it, and there's no two ways about it. And I feel like our industry is taking advantage of that, honestly. Um, so if you go online to get a list, you are going to be hit with national companies mostly, or franchises, or all kinds of things that will gladly send you a list because they don't have to do anything to help you. And if you go to any of the properties, they will get paid. And I'm not a fan of how it works, honestly. And I feel like the way I'm doing it has actually built my entire practice. I started at a company like that before it became even worse. Um, and I feel like the emphasis is on the properties, not the families. And I know the properties pay me, but they pay me because, in my case, because they know I'm making a good fit. And there's a respect thing going on here. I know we could talk for hours about my industry, but please don't go online to the Wild West. You'll get lists you will not know. People will be calling you, you have no control over, and marketing to you. I am very protective of the people that I work with. Uh, no, and everybody knows me. They know that, that people who are going through a transition do not want to be marketed to left and right and gotten a lot of stuff. But I work with every licensed community out there. I want to promise you, one of the reasons I went on my own is that some of the big companies, they're making contracts with the properties so that they get paid a certain rate and therefore don't work with all the properties. I wanted to have a full deck for my clients. So I'm going into a deeper dive than I would normally go, but it's a buyer beware market. And please don't, if you want a list, talk to somebody who knows what they're doing rather than just, you don't actually just want a list. You want somebody who's going to help you assess the list, know the caregiver ratio, know how frequently the management of the company has turned over, who's running the company at a highest level. It took me about 5 years in the industry even to understand the layers of management that I could be negotiating with or working with. And when there's an issue at the company, my clients call me back and say, help. And I do, so just like the situation, she wasn't a client of mine with a hospice. I'm going to be going into a facility one day. I want to get this right. I want some accountability. And yeah. So to answer your questions, there are millions of options out there depending upon your parameters.
All right.
So
So we have a question from CJ in the chat. What is the best age an independent retiree should plan to live in a continuing care community?
Wow. So I will say to you, a lot of these questions I'd rather talk one-on-one because it's not about the number of age at all. People are living longer and longer. I've seen some very sharp and amazing people that are in their late 90s that I'm working with that are awesome and living on their own. It's fantastic. And young people who go in because I will give you average ages in properties if that's what you want. I would say the average age in assisted living is 82. If you're going in independently it's called a CCRC or continuing care community, it is probably for the social life. And what I would do, and again, it isn't about the age. I help people to figure out how to tour appropriately. First of all, always go to a place a million times. You don't have to go once. You can go many times. I want you to eat there, look around the dining room. I want you to go for activities. So see what the average age is in the CCRC you're looking at and whether or not your peers are there. Because my guess is that this person is doing this for a social life. So, and one of the parts of my assessment is, who are you? What are your interests? Who are you? Because your social life is going to be that community, especially if you're thinking of staying there throughout the whole journey. So I can't give you a number. I mean, I can give you averages in assisted livings. In independent livings, it isn't so different, I find, actually. So go to the CCRC you have selected for yourself, spend a whole lot of time, go to activities, talk to the residents, eat lunch there, or, ask the person you're working with there to introduce you to a cohort of people you might like. So I can't give you a number, sorry.
Thank you. So Cornelia has a question in the chat as well. Could you provide referrals to companies that assist with downsizing pre-need?
Sorry, say that that do what?
Um, can you provide referrals to companies that assist with downsizing pre-need?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I love to do is I know organizers, I know bookkeepers. My goal is not to move you. I mean, that's how I get paid. But if it doesn't make sense, yeah, I have resources of people that I work with to stay at home. Um, yeah. So absolutely, there's an yeah, that's a whole other discussion, and I can refer them. Absolutely.
Great. And we do have Janice with her hand up. Janice, could you unmute and ask your question?
Yes, hi, Ben. I have two questions. One of them is what is your impression, opinion about dementia care units? That is to say, companies that um, they spend a lot of time primarily advertising their dementia
Ugh.
care units, and for whom are these dementia care units meant to care for, and at what stage are they not a viable solution for the care of a person with dementia? That's kind of a broad question. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I do a huge amount of work with dementia. Huge. And again, the devil's in the details because if a person, I'm going to give you a big answer, but I visit dementia programming places all the time. If a person is very high functioning, so there is a term mild cognitive impairment. Often, Wow, it's such a broad question. So if somebody, when I do an assessment, I find out what they can do. Can they dress themselves and just need prompting to dress themselves? Do they need just basically a program of executive functioning to get them through the day? Are they still social, even though they may repeat themselves in conversations? I try to focus on where they are because dementia is a progressive disease. If they're not a wander risk, they might be able to function in assisted living with help, reminders of activities and an organized, structured program. But then there are care facilities that are within assisted livings or sometimes standalone that handle people who are more progressed in their dementia. And that means potential wander risks and organized activities that meet the functioning of the person that has the dementia. These programs vary wildly. I mean, wildly. So depending upon the person's where they are in the disease, I will suggest, I mean, I can certainly show them all of the places that are licensed in their area, but I'll also suggest certain programs because they're not all the same by a long stretch. It has to do with caregiving ratio. It has to do with how much money the assisted living has actually put into the programming. Some programs are research-based, some aren't. There's been a lot of turnover in the industry, training, so many things. And then if a person with dementia is an extreme fall risk, people with dementia tend to be fall risk. Let me say their gait is affected, but they may need a smaller setting than a memory care facility. Memory care facilities are great for people who love activities and participate in activities. And especially if they are at the right level. But they are not great for people with dementia that need a lot of hands-on care, and then I would show them a board and care, but they only have maybe one activity a day. So you have to figure out where they are in the disease, and frankly, one setting may be good at one time, and then they need to be moved. And I like to get people with mild cognitive impairment moved in quickly because they will be able to stay in assisted living longer, chances are, because they are still developing habits and routines. I am a deep dive in dementia care, so you're giving me a great question, and I'm sorry I'm getting all caught up in the details, but that's what it's about. You pick how the person is manifesting it, and memory cares, you're right, they vary wildly because the state only requires a certain amount of training for the caregivers in memory care. And it's not a ton. So,
that was a question I really wanted to ask you about the staff and what kind of staff the using it. So are there psychologists, social workers,
no. So
MDs of
it
any
depends upon the
variety?
place because some of them have that and some of them don't. Generally, yes, I can think of one place that has social workers, but mostly they are caregivers who've been trained. There's an activity director who hopefully understands dementia because I've seen corporations encourage their activity directors in memory care to use programs because there's a lot of online programs for, brain train and games. But unless the activity director knows how to engage the resident with the program, it doesn't work. So most memory care facilities just have caregivers that are and an activity director and hopefully an LVN giving out medication, but most of it falls to the caregivers in reality. And caregiver ratios, and I'm going to be very broad here, in a memory care facility. The goal in a memory care facility that's big, if that's what you're asking about, is to get the people out of the room into spaces where one caregiver can keep an eye on everybody. So there are no standards other than how physically there's delayed egress in a memory care facility, but the burden falls to the caregivers who are caregivers, not psychologists or anything like that. They need constant training. So there is a huge variety in what is available out there. Did that answer your question?
It did. And I appreciate your comments. The other part of my question has to do with the state licensing bureau, and whether the state gets, would you say it's actively or aggressively involved in oversight of any of these the licensed assisted living, or dementia care, or
You are asking
any
these
of the
great
spectrum.
questions. Yeah. So like every other government agency, it's understaffed. That's why I'm so mission driven in my work and trying to stay involved, is that they may come once a year, but people can file complaints and then they have to follow up on it. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to know if there's any regular oversight of the facilities
Once
by
a
the
year.
state. So once a year, hopefully.
Generally once a year. But again, it's kind of like how I'm trying to answer these questions. Someone comes in and they check to make sure the records are kept appropriately. They look around, but it's not constant, no.
Those are my questions. I really appreciate your feedback.
No problem. I appreciate your questions, because the reason I do what I do is the devil's in the details. You have to know the details on who you're working with to make an appropriate match, and then work with the family to make them a savvy consumer so they feel they've gone to the best possible option of what exists, gotten the best deal they could get financially on what exists, and have a good team that they're creating, which I talk about, because you have to develop a team that you feel comfortable working with on an ongoing basis. And then you can always call me, because generally I know people, just from having doing it for so darn long.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
And so we have 5 minutes left, but we still have about 3 more questions. Bonnie, is it okay if we stay a little bit past 11?
Sure.
Thank you. So Julie has a question. What services are generally provided by independent living facilities? Would they include transportation or meals?
So I've got to think about, if you're talking about LA County, I'm thinking about yes on both.
Okay. And then John has a
And
question.
housekeeping, sorry, one more thing.
Mhm.
Housekeeping in addition.
Okay, great. John has a question. Where are you located? And can your consultation be in person or can it be on Zoom?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Zoom, but and I'll tell you why, because I'm taking notes
Mhm.
when I work. I create a file, it's a deep dive. I'm in West LA, not far from UCLA. But I go all over LA County. And yes, it can be in person. There are things that you pick up in person that are wonderful, that sometimes are keys to what's important to people. But I can also get a ton done over the phone. And I love the phone because we're very focused then on our voice and what we're saying and how we're saying it. So, but I'll do Zoom if I have to. But I'll be taking notes. They're going to be looking me. I'll be sitting like this, you know.
Mm. And then I have Cornelia Emerson who has her hands up. Cornelia, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
I actually put it in the chat,
Oh,
but I'm concerned about myself because my husband and I don't have children, and our relatives are all back east, but they're aging too. So, does that argue for a continuing care community?
No.
Okay.
But what I do is with people like you, I talk about power of attorney forms. I talk about, I find out, again, if you want to call me, I'll find out what the details. I don't know if you or your husband, if they're, and where your friends are, where your doctors are, I just want to find out who you are and then answer the question, because the thing I don't like
There's
about
no cookie
continuing,
cutter answer. I'm just getting exhausted running the house
yeah, you're not alone.
and chauffeuring my husband because he no longer drives to multiple doctor's appointments for him and me. We have no social life outside of the doctors and nurses that we see.
So you are a typical client, honestly. That's why people move. And I'm happy to show you continuing care communities if that's what you want. But let's talk about whether that makes sense. And I'm happy to, tell you what's available in that
Yeah.
regard. But you're not unusual, and I've been dealing with more and more people whose children aren't in the area. So I make sure they have a power of attorney and they thought about that, or they have, seen what's out there and have a headset. I am not a person who is going to say, just call me if you got to move. I mean, I do discharge planning, but I also do long-term planning, and I don't charge for my time. So if you want to pick my brain, that's why I built it. So there you go.
I like the phone too.
Okay, good. Good.
I will call.
Wonderful.
okay. And right now we don't have any more questions, it seems. If anyone has any last questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. We'll give it a second, but if not, then I think we are okay, unless Bonnie has any additional items.
No, I've loved the questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this for us. This has been incredibly informative, and I think I had a lot of very, very valuable information, a lot of things that we don't hear people talk about, we don't know about. It's been great. And thank you to everyone for attending and the great questions. I really appreciate your participation. We are sending out a thank you email afterwards that will include Bonnie's contact information in case you want to go back to that. And we'll also have a recording of this session as well in case you missed anything and you want to review it. But other than that, I think I'll give you back your day. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thank you, Lama. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.